we will learn about Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation's transition into ROW, that is results-only work environment. It is a business strategy in which employees are 100% autonomous and 100% accountable. So imagine a workplace that allows you to choose when and where to work as long as you produce the results. CMHC went through a very significant cultural transformation in which employees reevaluated their relationship to their work, to their colleagues, to their own purposes, and even to the physical space or virtual space they operate in. Please welcome our next speaker, Catarina Dattilo-Caron, and I'm hoping that I'm saying it just about right. Director of Leadership and Culture. It's very, very important that Kat will stay with us after her talk. So please feel free to type in your questions, and we are going to try to answer them, definitely discuss them in the Q&A session to be followed. So Kat, the floor is yours. I'm very happy to see you.
Thank you. So hold on one second. I'm getting ready with technology. So I just want to make sure you can hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Awesome,
See you, hear
Judith.
you just fine.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to load my presentation. Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to start. I'm going to set my timer because I know I have 18 minutes. So thank you, everybody, and good afternoon. I'm really excited to be with you here today and to talk about CMHC's transition to a results-only work environment. So this is our table of contents, what we're going to go through. Talk about ROW in the context of our broader environment at CMHC. Talk about the benefits realization, some of the things we've been able to measure, what ROW is and what it isn't. Talk about our journey, because I think it is important to let you know how this formed part of our greater transformation, what ROW looks like and lessons learned. And I want to leave that time for the questions and answers, because that's really a lot where the magic happens. We have a lot of organizations coming to see us about this. And it's really there where the magic happens, I think, and gives people that clarity. So this is a quote from Alvin Toffler, so an American writer and futurist. And this was like about 50 years ago that this was written. And why this is really important in the context of today is that while many organizations are still operating in a very traditional management system, it's about creating the conditions for success that will allow us to be the best employees, both professionally and then also personally, because life is a whole. And I think more than ever, we realize that, you know, there's work, there's life, but now it's how do you take those two together and make that be 100% so you could be happy in both places. So it's important here because what it does is it takes a lot of unlearning. So when we move to ROW, and everything we've done, a lot of things in future of work, we've unlearned the way we did things and accepting new ways of working that really allow us to thrive. So it's about embracing the change, but that's not easy for everybody. So future proofing is no longer about predicting the future. It's about structuring ourselves well enough to adapt to whatever comes our way. And COVID is a perfect example of how we were able to pivot based on what we had already done. So this talks about our journey. It's the then and now. So I think, you know, I wanted to take that opportunity to actually talk a little bit about who we are as CMHC. So we are a crown corporation of the Government of Canada. We were established in 1946 after World War II to help veterans find housing. And then since that, our mandate has expanded to include all Canadians. And we're referred to as Canada's National Housing Agency. We exist for a single reason, to make housing affordable for everyone in Canada and to remove barriers for those who do not have access to proper housing. So this explains who we are. We have a very ambitious agenda. That's just how we work. And we've transformed our culture to really align to that. We've transformed it with the culture in mind and with the employee and the client experience in mind. And that's actually a very key concept with ROW, is looking at who your client and what your results look at. So 2014, the descriptors were we were slow, we were bureaucratic, decisions took a long time to get made. We were very hierarchical, so we've broken that down and we've become wider. People leaders have more people reporting to them, so that way they don't micromanage. What they do is they coach. And then the employees have more accountability, more autonomy, and increase decision-making and the speed of decision-making. So that speaks to the way we behave. And also we've transformed our technology. So we're more digital. We take more risks, but we're also we embrace risk as opposed to, so we make decisions with risk in mind, but they're informed decisions. So this is a huge thing in terms of the way we've actually transformed our organization. We went through in 2014 a huge realignment to structure ourselves that way. In 2017, we went through a major IT outsourcing. So Accenture is now our technology partner. In the middle of that, results-only work environment came into play. That philosophy and that mindset shift, which started with a pilot. And most recently, we began the shift to an activity-based workplace, meaning we no longer have dedicated office spaces and we have much more collaboration space. So that means in the office, people don't have assigned seating anymore. This includes our president, this includes our executives. So when you choose to go in pre-pandemic, you sat who you wanted to sit beside, or you got to actually meet a whole lot of different people. So the employees have the exact same space as our executives. All right, so next page. This next slide really talks a bit about ROW in the context of our future of work. So it's nestled in something. So we had three things: technology, what is the digital platform that supports us, the hardware, the connection. So that was very pivotal and worked for us very well with ROW. The people, that includes the culture, the way we work, ROW. And then the space. What I talked about is that physical space, our actual building, the way it's set up, accessibility, and things like that. So this is our future of work. ROW was a key part of this future of work program. And the why we did it, the future of work is embedded in the whole philosophy that a fantastic employee experience leads to a fantastic client experience. At the end of the day, the beneficiaries of our work are Canadians, and that's really who we serve. So the key takeaway is that our new ways of working will allow us to get ahead of external large-scale change forces such as automation, mobility, and disruption to enable us to deliver our strategy. And COVID-19 is the absolute perfect example. It came upon us. We were able to pivot so quickly that it was fairly seamless in terms of a delivery. So it was quite incredible. So these are the results so far. At CMHC, we do engagement, so check-in surveys with our employees twice a year. And these are the results that came out right pre-COVID. So I do want to put that in because COVID has changed a lot of things, and we hope to get back to that. Autonomy has gone up, accountability has gone up, engagement. Work-life balance pre-COVID used to be one of our top stressors for years. For the first time, it got moved out of the top stressor since ROW adoption and reduced by 50%. From a talent attraction perspective, it is now our #1 talent attraction tool, which used to be compensation, used to be benefits, and this has now moved ahead. And in terms of the climate agenda, what we've been able to impact has been so incredible. And this is all pre-COVID, these numbers. So you could only imagine now how much more environmentally sustainable we are all looking at becoming. So the ROW, the basics, we'd like to talk about what does ROW actually mean. It's really a workforce strategy. It's a mindset shift in the way we work that you're driving towards 100% accountability, 100% autonomy. So what it does is introduces choice to the employees of how they work, the best way they work to really deliver on results. So it's always about those results. And when we talk about results, it's the what and the how. It's how did you get there? And what are the behaviors and the competencies to make sure you did it in a way that's in line with our values? When we talk about ROW, what's often important is to talk about what it isn't. So it's not a work from home program. It's not a job sharing agreement, a telecommuting agreement. It is choice. So you can work from home and things like that, but it's so much more than that. So it's like work isn't somewhere we go, like the traditional way I've got to get up and go to work, drive, stay there for a certain set of time. It's something we do. And it really instills trust in terms of the environment. It's almost, if you think about it, a little bit of equation, it's choice coupled with trust, coupled with strong goals equals stronger accountability and stronger autonomy. So this describes our journey, and I think it's really important to show it took time to get here. So in 2011, a few employees read the book, Why Work Sucks, and the idea was bounced around, but nothing happened. Then in 2014, our president, who was really a catalyst for the change, joined CMHC. He was very open to transformation, and he really was the beginning of our journey. So we could see that the culture was going to become much more of a focus with the new CEO. The raw idea came back, and it was shared with some employees, and people liked it. But at the end of the day, there still was no traction. It was still a little bit pie in the sky, and it was hard to grasp, a little blue sky. Fast forward to 2016, where the organization launched an innovation challenge to its employees. And they asked the employees, what ideas do you have? What are your big ideas to transform the organization? They could be anything. It could be how we're structured, how we deliver our services, our work environment. And the task will put to employees to come up with ideas. So the 3 top ideas were voted by employees, and they were pitched at a Dragon's Den event. So I don't know if you have that same concept in Hungary, but it's, you have these dragons, which are leaders that will support an idea. And if they say yes, it will move forward. So I was at the event. It was wonderful. The employees pitched it. At the end of the day, Row came out on top, and they won the right to prototype the idea. And I think that's important. The prototype is important. So it shows, logic in how we're going to put things forward. Then 2018-19, we moved into the prototyping phase. It did well. So we selected few groups in the business, in the enablement functions, different areas, places that have more flexibility, places that have no flexibility or less flexibility. And we provided them a ton of hands-on support. So we did a full little launch with them, and we measured their survey results. So we measured their results, and they were like about 88% higher on the autonomy and accountability than other people in the organization. So we had the measures in place to show that we are ripe to move this forward. Then 2018, we trained the whole organization. We went through very significant training for all employees, for all people leaders. We went into a full implementation corporate-wide in 2019. And now we are saying that we are what's called now in the sustainment phase, which still requires a lot of work. But if you want to get a sense of what that looked like, this is what the collective effort looked like. So this was huge when we launched it. Because we had the leadership support, it also meant that we were able to plan for it thoughtfully. This is a change initiative, huge in terms of human change, people leaders, the way they change and the way they treat their employees, the way employees choose to show up, and real clarity on results. So huge planning and resources put into place. It required a lot of unlearning, so lots of change. We had an army consisting of our future of work already had an executive leadership team, so they remained in place, and Row became part of that. Change management communications, huge support and very significant. We had what's called a Row SWAT team. So 4, 6, 9 people really, including Culture RX, who is that backbone of the foundation of the methodology. We had our Row leads and Row coaches. These Row coaches are the ones that were trained and enabled to answer all of the questions and to enable others, because you want to spread the word so everyone becomes a Row ambassador, essentially, down the line. Future of work, we had a change network, and they were able to sit in all different parts of the business, so they were able to infuse the change agenda. And then 110 Row ambassadors. So every team had 2 ambassadors. And then they were able to bring everything up at their team meeting, and they were able to advance the agenda. So this goes back to the whole traditional notion. This is the way we used to operate. People used to go into the office. They had a set amount of time. You were judged by how long you worked. Oh my God, look how amazing they are. They're always here late at night, and they work such long days. That doesn't mean anything. They could be on Facebook all day long and you wouldn't know. So it's really taking that whole notion of time and perception that you can see someone, and seeing someone means the work is getting done. It was a very permissions-based environment. It was an environment where if an executive asked you to do everything, you would drop everything, those fire drills. But that's changed. And meetings for the sake of having meetings with all these people. So now in our environment, when you have a meeting, it's, do I understand why I'm there? Is there an agenda? If not, it gives you that permission to ask. So you know why you're there and how you can contribute to that agenda. So this talks about a day in the life. So again, I talk about the offices. Everyone has access to the same type of office space. And that includes our CEO and our president. So it goes, when I talk about meetings and being optional in that you have the right to ask, what's my role? What's the agenda? How can I contribute? And in the past, people would just accept meetings. They would complain, but they would accept. And sometimes the meetings were for the right reasons, and sometimes it was a waste of time. So now we are aligning our time with key results. And then sometimes it's like, oh, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't be there, but someone else should. So you are being an owner in all of your transactions. We talk about sludging. It's a row concept, a row term. And it means that you don't judge people of, oh, where were you? I didn't see you. These really old-fashioned notions, asking people where they're working, how they choose to work. It's really focusing on the results, not passing judgment. That's probably one of the biggest things. And when we talk about results, a lot of people were saying at the beginning, oh my God, if we think about results now, we're going to make people become these very aggressive people just targeting the results. When we talk about results, it really needs to be anchored to the corporate strategy, and they need to be linked into people's performance goals. And the goals need to align, and they need to be agile because our work changes. But when we talk about goals, it's the what and the how. So what result did you achieve? But how did you achieve it? Did you do it on your own? Did you collaborate? Did you help people in their goals? Because a we becomes extremely, extremely important in a row. So these are some of the questions now that we don't ask anymore. So if one of my employees asks me, could I take Friday off? I'll say, I don't know, can you? Is your work covered? Did you get everything done that you needed to get done? So it bounces back the accountability back to the employee, and then they really start to take ownership of their work. Everything is really about, it's not about a person being totally independent. It's more so that they're acting as a collaboration among their team to make sure, you know what, I think someone can cover me off. I'll be okay. It's the same thing as when you take vacation, but people have a little bit more flexibility in their environment. And this speaks to collaboration in a row. So it's not about an employee saying, okay, I'm going to manage my time, my deliverables. Think about it as, what do I need to get done? What do I need from others to get my work done? And the other part of the equation is, what do others need from me to get their work done? So it's very much a we. So what it does mean is greater communication, and also instilling a negotiation mindset on your deliverables. Because let's say, like I talked about in the old environment, an executive would say, get this done. Everybody would drop everything, stop their work. Oh my God, the president's asked. So now we have to say things like, when would you like that by? And then the people will say often, oh, Friday. And you're like, oh, okay. So it's not a fire drill, it's open communication, and people are able to plan their work. So what we do know in that sometimes that can be challenging, because you're often asking your boss clarifying questions of, when do you need that by? What does success look like? If I was to approach, so they are used as a sounding board, and you're asking questions. So we do know that psychological safety is really important in these type of environments, because it's not easy sometimes to ask your boss those type of questions. So psychological safety is one of those key foundations for this type of environment, because in psychological safety is where you have trust. And when you have trust, you actually have greater abilities to innovate. And really, innovation is something we want to try to move forward much more in our culture. And we know that psychological safety is a baseline. I know I'm getting close to time. So for here, all I want to say is that ADKAR is the model we use from a change management perspective, and we had lots of desire to move it forward. Performance management became clear, so we've spent a lot of time on that, about clarity of goals and thinking about, what does that result look like? What does success look like? We've enabled all of our people leaders. We've delivered performance coaching across, so they are enabled to be coaches. Wellness and mental health is extremely important, because what I talked about, psychological safety, and really a really good onboarding experience is important in this new environment. So change takes time. Give it time for people to grieve the old way of doing things and really monitor their change going forward. And make sure that everybody doesn't think it's Row that changed everything. It's not Row. It's a new way of thinking. It's a new mindset. And making sure those other things like performance management and onboarding, that they follow that same journey about the employee experience. And last things I want to end off with COVID-19. These are some of the lessons. So while a lot of organizations were reacting and trying to focus on their people and the mental health and the work and their technology and how do I get my computers at home, we already had all those flexibilities in our environment. Most of our employees had, they already had laptops. They had choice. They were able to work wherever they wanted. So it allowed us to actually respond to the government because we had to put government programs in place to support COVID. And at the same time, it allowed us to focus on the well-being of our employees. And that was seen as a huge win, and employees truly supported and appreciated where we were able to focus our time. So we were actually fairly seamless in terms of an experience, and we were quite fortunate. So with that, I know it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of questions that you might have. So I want to open up the floor and give folks that opportunity.
Thank you very much, Kat. It was really an awesome talk, and you talk about it so passionately that my first question is that it comes through that it's personal for you, as it's really personal for you as well. So what was the most defining moment for you in the whole remarkable journey?
So I will say it was interesting. So when Row first came out, it wasn't under my portfolio. And I was skeptical as an individual. I was thinking, oh my God, could we really transform? So I always tell people, could we do it? Are people really going to change? Do I have the capability to change? And I will tell you, it's that whole personal journey that I went through that I was even skeptical. And then when we did it, everyone looks back now and said, we can't think about going back because we can't even imagine what it would look like because it is really behind us. So it was that aha moment of the personal change and that we did it as a company. It was pretty interesting. It was a wonderful journey, but it was really well supported. And I would say that's definitely a key for success.
Okay. It sounds very authentic and very, I would have to say, liberating.
It is.
To listen to this, but it's not easy. I get that as well. We've got two great questions. One is that how did implementing Row impacted the number of hours people put in their work on the average?
I would say that's a wonderful question because, so we try to go away with the concept of hours, that you have 37 and a half hours that you work, and try to say is, for example, in our old environment, right? It was like you work a certain amount of time, there was structure. If people want that structure, they can still have it. It's for them. They can go into the office, they can work the exact times before that they used to. But now some other folks are, the biggest flexibility is, guess what? My child has a soccer game at 2:00 this afternoon. I'm going to go to it and I'm going to tell people I'm going to it. And I know my work before and I know after. So you know what? You will see them logged on later in the evening because they have choice and they appreciate the flexibility. A lot of young working parents, there's a lot of obligations sometimes. They're able to do them. And then what they do is they sign on at a different time. Kids are sleeping early. They go in and they do their work. So hours, it is very easy to work all the time, especially now with COVID. Our offices are our home. So it is something that the check-ins with employees are really important to make sure that they are taking that time to disconnect. And because it is an important part of the journey, and innovation doesn't happen when you're exhausted. So I think it's a very good question. It is always something to monitor. We want to give people that autonomy to manage their work and their choice, but we need to align it to results. So you need to make sure is how do you stay connected with your employees? And I'd say that's one of the most important things is the connection.
It's if I get that well, knowing the tangible outcomes, the results, is really a key to Row. But are we really clear about it before implementing Row? Did everyone in your organization know exactly what the tangible outcomes are? Or we measure what we can and we measure time and location because those are the easiest things, to measure. So how did you go about this tangible outcome part?
The good part is that we already had a mechanism in place through our pulse surveys, which were twice a year. So we started embedding questions about Row, about their awareness of it, their desire to change, so we were tracking them on that journey. And what we were always tracking was their accountability and their autonomy. And everything started to increase. So it started to show we were moving in the right direction. So that was really important. And then we knew the climate agenda was extremely important. So we started measuring what does that actually look like as part of our digital transformation. managing our time on the road, looking at printing, looking at anything associated with climate change and environmental sustainability. So we were doing that as part of our digital transformation and our workplace transformation as well. So we had lots of different levers working at the same time. And I think that's what it was. It was that when all the right conditions create that right opportunity and that you're ripe for the change. And you have to realize, I will say one of the key factors was our president.
Who have to be, as we understand, at a certain place in certain hours, like a customer service person who is working in a branch. I don't know if you got branches that have office hours. So if that's not a good example, then a receptionist.
No, it's a good example.
So how do you go about jobs that require physical presence at a certain place? Can they be 100% autonomous?
So one of the examples we always use, typically it's just a big one, is if you are a bus driver, your seat needs to be driving the bus. So that is where you need to be. So in our environment, we have what's called underwriters, the ones that underwrite a lot of our loans for the banks. So we do not need to be in a branch, but so they have choice to work from home. But what they don't have is a lot of flexibility, because we need core hours covered with all of our financial institutions. So what we've given them is they were part of the prototype group, and we gave them choices of how to manage their schedule. So it's no longer the leader coming up with your schedule of when you work. They have the autonomy to do it. They also have the autonomy to look more at their practices and see how they can streamline so they become more efficient. So autonomy and accountability, while where you work is part of it, the other part is how you work. So you need to make sure you look at your environment and what does that actually look like. So that's a fair question.
Thank you. In the concept of role, office becomes not a place, but more like a tool. Mm-hmm. So we have a question in the chat that, do you have people working from abroad? Good. So is autonomy 100% borderless?
Good question. So I think one of the things we have to realize is that we are a government of Canada. So we have to look at what are we legislated by. So we can't circumvent that. So one of the things for us is from a security clearance perspective, our citizen, we are not allowed to work in the United States. So people can't be on vacation, like working from Florida for a month, because with our security clearances and our border, we are not allowed to work there without having a work permit. So we can't say that we're working from there. So we do have, let's say, one employee, I think he's working in Italy. We have a little bit more flexibility there, but it's not something that we go too broad because of the time and everything it will create. If everyone was working on a global 24-hour scale, I think our results would be a little bit limited. So typically we're saying in our environment, so you need to set your own context and what your sandbox is, anywhere in Canada. So when we hire now, we actually don't have locations for many of our positions. We say we're location agnostic, and you can work from anywhere in Canada. So that's our boundary.
And we have a question about learning. You use the word learning and journey a lot of times in your presentation, and that they really say a lot. So we have a question about learning and also unlearning. Mm-hmm. So what did you train the people for? So what were the exact subject matters for employees and for managers?
Yep. So for employees, everybody went through a one-day training. First, they went through, now the way we do it now is they go through an onboarding module. That's an e-learn. So right when you come into the organization, then at some point within the next 3 months, you will take a one-day training. And then if you're a people leader, you also take an additional half-day training of unlearning the way you would typically lead your employees. Or we're going away from, let's say, micromanagement. I don't need to know what time you're working and how you're going. I want to know is, what do you want to get done in the next 2 weeks? What do you want to get done in the 90 days? So learning people to focus on results and not where they are and these other notions that are more traditional environments. So it's really about that mindset shift. We're also giving people permission to do things differently. So when we first get out of the gate, we say, do one scary thing. So that means maybe tomorrow afternoon you go to the movies and don't tell anybody. And people were like, what do you mean? So everyone was tasked to do something that they're not comfortable with, to show that they have to go against the way they typically believe things, because it's about a discomfort in the new way of learning, like unlearning. So my employees, it's really about, what do you want to get done? So that clarity of language isn't easy for people either. What do you want to get done when, and what do you need from me? How can I help you in that journey? And getting them to start thinking a little bit more, as opposed to telling them the way the work needs to get done.
How does the manager role change in Row? So what are the fundamental changes there?
Exactly. So what we call a lot is results coaches. So we've trained all of our people leaders to be coaches. And you can't coach all the time, because sometimes an employee, if they're new in their journey, you need to be more prescriptive. If it's a fire, there's an urgent matter, then yes, you need to be call everybody to action and give people a plan. But where there's opportunities where people have more room to develop, it's how do you coach them through it so they learn to be autonomous, they learn to come up with the answers. So we've trained all of our people leaders, and now it's part of our learning curriculum that they all get trained on, as you're new and you come into people leader roles, how to become a coach. So that way you have many different hats as a leader. You have a directive hat, you have a motivational hat, you also have that coach hat, and to learn when to exercise it. So that was a key and fundamental thing. And the other thing is being a little bit more clear on setting goals in the form of results. So by the end of December, I would like to have this achieved. And then you take that and say, okay, what tactics? As opposed to saying the tactics, but not understanding the result. So employees, we're spending a lot of time on performance management, so they align what they do to results. And then sometimes they can look at their work and say, you know what, I'm going to these meetings, I'm doing this, and it doesn't actually align to any of our key results. Then it makes you a choice of why are you actually doing it. So you're better aligning your time to corporate results.
And how do you incorporate Row in your recruitment process? I can see the attractive side very much, the attractive side. I can also imagine that it's kind of scary for people not to be measured in time and location. So what happens in your recruiting?
So what we do is we try to so we have it on our website and our career site so people understand and they can read it. The also thing is when our recruiters are talking to people and our people leaders, when we're hiring managers, we try to give them a realistic job preview to let them know this is the type of environment and do you want to be part of it? Because if an employee likes structure, so we had some employees at the beginning that they would come in, they're like, oh, you know what, my team's not around me. Some of them are working from home. I don't know where everybody is. And they really liked the physical environment where everybody used to be. If that's who they are, then maybe we're not the right place for them. So we're very conscious that Row is not for everybody, but for the way it's showing up, it is definitely a top attraction tool, because what it does, it shows a person as 100% and that you have choices in your environment. So that way you could do a little bit better in both. So we try to give that realistic job preview from the beginning and let them answer the questions and the answers up front, so there's no surprises when they come in.
In a lot of ways, Row sounds so logical to me that it's really about human nature. I want to create my job. I want to create my life. What are the pushbacks? Are there any?
Well, you know what? A lot of people, sometimes they say, oh, there's a lot of stuff to do with leaves. It's been one of our things that we're working on, is that because the concept of leaves is a little bit more watered down a little bit in a Row, because they, for example, a Row concept is that there's unlimited vacation leave. We piloted that with the prototype group, and a lot of people were like, well, when I have unlimited, I actually take less, or because I keep thinking there's so much work to do. So we are probably going away from that notion. We've been testing it, and we don't think it's getting the clarity, and I think it's actually it would cause more anxiety for employees. And we know that in this environment, we can see our employees, they can easily work more, and they want to give more. So what we want to do is make sure that they have vacation. So we're reviewing our vacation policy so that way they give people the time, but we're probably not going to move to what's called an endless vacation policy.
Having all this experience with Row, what would you say, Kat, what drives the fear of organizations to have structure, discipline, and schedule and policy on top of policies?
So I guess the biggest thing, because we've reduced our policies to be more directives. You're just treating your employees like adults, but there's a big fear of people because of fear of that traditional command and control. So if there's not an appetite to let go of that and to really increase autonomy and accountability, it goes back to the Daniel Pink Book, drive. Autonomy is the number one driver to really motivate people to change and to really give their best. So companies need to be there if they really want to be right for the change. They need to back it up by their behaviors and their actions. And if they're not there, then you can't say you're going to move into this environment unless you have the leadership behind it.
In my experience, when I deal with big transitional changes, what we experience here in Hungary, and I think it's not only my experience, a lot of colleagues would agree, that we want to go forward so much. We believe in the cause, the purpose so much, that we spend too little time on prototyping and testing. So can you please tell us more about your prototyping procedure?
Absolutely. So that was, I would say, recipe for success, prototyping, because it's where you find out what's working well and what you find out where it doesn't work well. So in the prototyping, pick different areas of the business. Pick the areas of the business that you think it's easy to do a row. Pick the ones that it's hard, because row needs to be for everyone. It can't just be for a percentage of your population. So pick different areas, different groups, and pick what's noticeable. So we have an organization of 2,000 employees. We picked there was a prototype group in HR, in the various elements of the business. And then you use those prototype groups and do a good implementation. You educate them, you do the training, you monitor, and then you measure. So all of the prototype groups, all of their results in the pulse surveys were dissected to make sure, are we moving along the way? Then you would use your small little SWAT team to look at what's working, what's not. You have those interviews you discuss. So whatever didn't work in the prototype, you fixed it for the next thing. But most of the stuff did work, and it was all that human change of behavior.
You talked about a journey. I've got a journey for you, so you can go back in time, Kat. And there is one thing that you can change going back in time. What would that be?
It's a good question, because I must say I was so impressed with the rigor that got rolled out. You know what I would say is, and it's hard to do, but if there was a way to do it, is how do you take the context of your organization and put it in with the row words and the concepts so people really can identify the organization? We did it a lot, but now I think we're doing it in the sustainment phase. So goal clarity and results are really important. So if there was a greater handle on that first, it would have eased our journey, because people had a tough time really focusing their work to results. So performance management, I would say, is one of the key foundational pillars. So getting there, and that means also having really open and honest dialogues with your people leaders, that really creates a great success. If we did a little bit better there, that probably would have helped, but I don't know how great a company can really get there.
Right. You really got me going into Row. The more I know about it, the more I want to know about it. So thank you very much for this inspiring and I say liberating talk. So thank you very much for sharing your experience with us. And all the best to you. And don't let work suck. Row instead.
That's awesome, Judith. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the afternoon.
Thank you very much. Have a really nice day today.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Kat.